Hello, everybody. This is Gary Gomes. I'm happy to be back. It's a day later than I usually broadcast, and I had a wedding to officiate yesterday, so that was fun. And I wish the couple all the luck in the world, and Louisa and Kevin. It was an honor to officiate at your wedding. I'm a Swami, okay, so that's why I can do these functions, and I can officiate at baptisms, a variety of religious services. If you wish that service, in addition to my astrology practice and remedial measures and um, oh gosh, a variety of other things I do. Astrology lessons. If you're interested in astrology lessons or in readings, contact me at 508-525-0001 or at GaryGomesG@gmail.com. So I will provide a link so you can get a biography and also know where to contact me for services. I've just had so little time to do that over the past few years, really, to be honest. But I'm going to try to make it work this time for you guys, and so there's less advertising and more content in the videos. Uh, Cross fingers, this will work this time because I lost the connection when I was like, or maybe around halfway through um, this particular session. Sundays are a busy day for the internet, and I turned off my TV, so the cats are watching dead air right now. I want to get back and give the cats some entertainment. So, all right. I did want to mention that uh, the forecasts for earthquakes in North Africa and floods in North Africa were accurate. Um, so let's pull up the chart um, and see what's happening right now. So we get the chart up though, okay, because everything disappeared. I will have a new computer set up hopefully by next week, um, which should be a lot clearer. It's a newer system. The audio should be better. Just a bunch of things should be nicer for you folks. I need to get the chart up. The chart closed down when I closed the system before, so my apologies. All right, so let's go here. Not sure why it's not opening. Let me just see if I can. There it is. Okay, it opened. So we'll do this for a now chart. It's 11:59. It's September 17th, 11:59. Um, all right, so I'm pulling the chart up right now. All right, so we have a Scorpio rising, which is different than the rising sign I started with before. But let's show that to you on the screen. Again, for those of you who are new to this or who are tuning in for the first time, I've gone through this many times before uh, with subscribers, but this will only take a few minutes. Uh, and I'm going to do stop share, and I like to do it three times just to make sure that we have a connection. Stop share, and one more time for luck. three is the Jupiter number, so we're doing it just to make sure that we're on screen. It looks like we're on screen. So there are a couple of significant changes since last week. First of all, the sun has left Leo, so we're not quite as depressed about the future as we were before. Usually, sun in Leo is a good thing because we have a lot of energy, we have a lot of willpower, but sun is aspected by Saturn. So this chart, it says Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, then back to our friend Pisces. Now, on this particular chart, so these are all, in Indian astrology uses what's called a sidereal or a star-based zodiac, which means that essentially all your signs get pushed back one whole degree, almost one whole sign. So essentially, if you were born, let's say Aries, if you were born after the 15th or before the 15th of the month, your sun sign is in Pisces. So that gets a little confusing to Western audiences seeing the show for the first time. But certain of the planetary aspects don't change all that much, and certain of the planetary significations don't change all that much. Saturn is aspecting Jupiter right now. Saturn is also aspecting Mercury. Mercury went direct. So that's another big change. So that means a lot of things that we were hoping would happen, or a lot of communications that were essentially garbled or confused, they become very clear. There is a phenomenon in Western astrology um, in which Mercury retrograde tends to last for about 3 weeks after the event has occurred, and I found that there's a little bit of truth to that. You do get a little bit of backwash, but also it kind of gets you away from wishful thinking. It kind of gets you away from hoping things will go back to the way they were or back to a previously existing state. And the other thing is we have a bunch of planets. We have Sun, Moon, and Mars all together. It's a new moon today. Okay. So that's the start of a new cycle in the month. So essentially, um, this is generally not considered to be the best time to um, to do events or to start events. It's generally considered to be, except there are certain combinations which are acceptable for that. Um, and it's usually not a good time to initiate activities. But it is a good time for rethinking and for planning for the future and for moving forward. I'm going to talk about a couple of things that happened in the news. As I said, I don't think I said this, but um, we did have um, earthquakes and floods in northern Africa, which I correctly predicted. Um, we're having a lot of environmental issues, which are really connected both with Saturn in Aquarius, Jupiter being in Aries sign along with Rahu, and K2 in Libra, um, and Mars in Virgo. Now, the reason I'm mentioning all these planets is because one planet alone will not do anything. You need a combination of factors in order for something to happen, for something significant to happen. So this particular combination here, um, so the Saturn Mercury combination, the emphasis is usually on bad news or on bad communications. Politics is a bit of a mess, mainly because of Saturn aspecting Jupiter and Rahu, and discontent. I was watching discontent around the world with the current state of politics is going to continue really at least until April of this coming year, and I think even a bit beyond that, mainly because um, over the next couple of years, Rahu in Pisces will cause dissolution of some institutions. Ketu will be in Virgo, so a lot of the elements that we've seen people agitating for change about, those will actually happen over the next year and a half. Now, whether or not that'll be a good thing or a bad thing, I think you're going to see a lot of reform in healthcare because of K2 entering Virgo. I think you're going to see a lot of reform in religion because of Rahu entering Pisces. And I also think that leaders in general, leadership in general, Rahu is going to dominate the chart for the next 4 or 5 years, to be honest. That's the North Lunar Node, and it causes disruption. And it's a disruptor planet. Now, all disruptors are not bad. Keep this in mind. A lot, when I was back in graduate school, this was relatively recently, there was a lot of talk about disruption of the educational process. And a lot of that was connected with online education. But there are also disruptors happening in politics, in so we're seeing patterns like we've never experienced in our lifetime, where we have a large part of the president's incumbent party in the United States not really wanting him to run again. We're seeing a large part of um, the opposition party not wanting their front runner to run again, and but it looks like uh, we're seeing uh, another impeachment inquiry being undertaken right now. And despite how you feel about the Republicans or the Democrats, this is extraordinarily unusual. Um, it's not really a state in which. So I think within about 5 or 6 years, you'll see essentially um, maybe a bit of a reorganization of political systems around the world. And again, it's not going to be entirely bad. Um, I it was interesting. I was watching a speech by a presentation by Mr. Schwab about who's the head of the World Economic Forum, talking about elites being challenged. And I think one of the things that we're going to see is that tendency, that um, questioning, very much like we saw in the late 60s, early 70s, that kind of questioning, that kind of disruption, that kind of questioning of authority figures will become almost institutionalized around the world, if that makes sense. You, you know, so I, so I, I think you'll see a large struggle um, taking place internationally, economically, politically, and even socially. So we're seeing all those signs right now, and it's mainly because of this Rahu. Okay, so we're reconnected. Okay, and hopefully this doesn't keep on being a pattern. All right. So the time looks like it's still stable, so I'm going to talk. Well, I can't talk. So I think what you're going to see is a lot of change, and it'll really start this fall in a very big way. And I actually think around December you're going to see big changes. Around October, some I would say some panics in financial markets, some panics in real estate. And uh, again, a lot of this will tend to calm down quite a bit when Jupiter is going will be free of the influence of Rahu around December, but again, it will be kind of disruptive. Right now, we're hearing a lot of bad news because Saturn's aspecting Mercury. Mercury stays in the sign for another 15 days. It'll go into Virgo. We'll hear um, oh, some kind of aggressive news and also some kind of increased worry about disease and things like that. But just talking about COVID, just quickly, the COVID cases, at least from what's been reported. Now, again, nobody wants to underestimate COVID, but the COVID cases have been reported as having relatively mild symptoms in most cases right now. So hopefully, not wood, it's losing its potency as a disease. If you think you have it, by all means get checked out. Don't risk your health. But there are indications it's not as serious as it once was. So, but again, I'm not a medical professional. I don't pretend to be one. And if you're at all worried about your health, again, get tested. Make sure you're not playing Russian roulette with your health, and just see what's going on. Just see what's going on. All right, so I'm going to stop the share. Just make sure this goes up again. And all right, so what we have is we do have potential for some air catastrophes because of Saturn being in Aquarius, but I don't think those will be really strong um, just because of Saturn's retrograde status. We will also see what I would call take backs or buybacks on not buybacks. I'm trying to think of the right word. Um, Reconsiderations of positions. We're seeing a lot less knee-jerk reaction to various political positions which have been held for the past few years. I think that's a positive thing. And I think we're also seeing, as we get closer and closer to December, more of a shared vision as to what um, we want governments to do and what we want governments to be and how we want our lives to run. Um, I think it's fascinating when periods like this happen, when people get into like these um, kinds of silos of behavior where they're saying to themselves, I don't want to talk with that person, or I don't want to talk with that person because they don't believe the same way I do. And the unfortunate part about that is we never make progress. We never get to resolution. So let's talk about real world issues, though, as opposed to those are real world issues. But let's talk about, and again, you're seeing even in political parties around the world struggles for power, struggles for position. I can even talk about the Republican leadership right now because there's a budget debate going on right now, and um, the speaker is being challenged for leadership again. And so again, this is happening at a micro level, at a macro level. These things don't just happen by themselves. All right, so we have Mars in this chart. A lot of focus on property, especially over the next 2 months, and a lot of focus, especially over the next week, on investigations. Okay, because we have Saturn aspecting Scorpio. Um, a lot of a lot of a lot of news and a lot of scandal coming out in legal issues because of Jupiter and Rahu being in the sixth house, and maybe the introduction of fairness into um, both sides of of legal issues, maybe even world issues coming up over the next couple of weeks as well because of Saturn's aspect on Venus, but it'll be slow moving. Venus is going to be under the influence of Saturn really for the next couple of months, and then it'll be debilitated. So you really won't see Venus really strong again until sometime around, I would say around mid-October, to be honest with you. So a lot of legal issues will just be delayed or deferred or put put on the back burner. So a lot of the efforts, that's why you're seeing a lot of the efforts to have speedy trials conducted, just being delayed and deferred and not really being paid serious attention to. Um, Jupiter's aspecting Mercury in this chart. Um, so that'll give a certain amount of truth to the media, and Jupiter's also aspecting K to a certain amount of truth to um, stories about theft and losses, although it will be a little bit more permitted than normal. And Saturn, again, is dominating the chart. Saturn's really the most important planet in the chart, although it is significant that the sun, which indicates the government, is coming out being a little bit more critical. Mars is being a little bit more aggressive, and Moon is being a little bit more attentive to what people want as opposed to what they think they want. But I still think the overall opinion that people have is that they're not being listened to, that they're not being paid attention to, and that's really dangerous for that's really dangerous politically. It's dangerous for natural resources. It's dangerous for economic stability. So I think you'll see a general slowdown in the economy. I've said this before, and I'm seeing it again. I'm already seeing it myself, not personally, but I'm seeing it on the street level. And so even though people are still buying and still consuming, they're trying to be a little bit more careful about it. And there are limitations happening across the world in terms of assets. Oil prices certainly haven't come down. That Saturn aspect in Jupiter and Rahu may still be unstable for the next few months and maybe even higher in December. I hope not. That's quite possible. So let's look at your individual charts. So this is the next week, and we'll look at things in terms of like earthquakes or natural catastrophes, and also governmental issues when we get to the end of this particular recording. Okay, so Aries has some problems with children, fights or arguments, maybe even some minor legal issues or struggles coming up from competition is also a signification of this. Communications with children are very important to the sign this month. So this is April 15th to May 15th, for those of you who don't know. Home life, though, overall, it feels like you're getting some support in terms of home life, in terms of relationship partner. Although, again, uh, relationship partners will seem to be a little bit indifferent or a little bit um, detached, but they'll still seem to be nicer than they have been. They'll be more considerate than they have been. Ninth house Lord is in the first house, so again, it's kind of a lucky time for this particular sun sign, rising sign, or moon sign. It isn't that bad, but again, disappointment in relationship life is indicated, and but again, a lot more honesty about relationship life is showing up. That's always somewhat of a good thing, even if it's a little bit saddening. Um, and I think that overall, the communications about relationship life are going to be more realistic. There'll be a more realistic assessment of friendships too. Essentially, friends will disappoint you, but again, it'll build more self-reliance for the sign. For Taurus, Taurus has no planets in the first house, Lord of the first house and third. So this sign is going to be very polite to people. It's going to be very um, forgiving of people. And that's May 15th to June 15th for those of you who don't know. And again, home life, there'll be a lot of focus on working to make the home a little bit better, working to make the home a little bit nicer. Fifth house, again, some fights with kids, some fights with kids, but some fights with relationship partners, but also a good time for stoking relationship interests and maybe finding new relationship partners. K2's in the sixth house. That's not a bad placement, but again, the sign does have to be a little bit careful about health. The Saturn's in the 10th house, so this planet will be working this sign will be working very, very hard. And Saturn's aspecting Jupiter, so again, some expenses are expected for this particular sun rising or moon sign. For a Gemini, Gemini's Lord is in the third house. So again, this is what I would call a polite combination. Mercury is in its own sign. It's not with any other planets. That makes Mercury basically good, although it is influenced by Jupiter and Saturn, but it's two-thirds good, one-third difficult, one-third pessimistic. And basically, people with this combination will be a little bit pessimistic, but guardedly optimistic about the future. Venus is in the second house. They'll be very loving, very compassionate, usually, but again, very sensitive. A lot of Geminis have had their feelings hurt over the past few months, or they're kind of disappointed about the way life has turned out for them. And they're a bit angry about it. They feel like they've been used or victimized by relationship partners. Mars is aspecting the seventh house, after all. Okay. K2's in the fifth house. Lovers have been lying to you, or your luck seems to be at kind of a stalemate. Within a couple of months, relationship life will open up for this sign. There'll be better luck in relationship life. Um, Actually, by late November, early December, and I think you'll start to see better or more appropriate friendships arising and more appropriate relationship partners coming up. And when I say appropriate, I mean people who will share your goals, that you'll feel attracted to, that you'll feel are honest with you. Um, the sixth house, no real indications of diseases, although children may be a little bit unruly. Saturn's in the ninth house, so slow and steady wins the race for this particular sign. Um, and gains will come over the next couple of months, but again, slowly. And some gains you have been promised will be snatched away, but they'll be restored in December. For Cancer, Venus is in the first house for Cancer, rising moon or sun. This is July 15th to August 15th. And essentially, Venus being in the first house makes the sign very emotional, very desirous of what they want to happen. Communication wise, though, they'll be a little bit better at communicating and understanding. Let's get back to this. All right, so it doesn't look like we're losing time. So let's make sure the share is working. Okay. This has been really annoying. This is what they call not Mercury backlash, but Mercury. There's a post Mercury effect, post Mercury direct effect, which makes it seem like you're thinking clearly, but there are still interruptions in communications. And this is Sunday, so this is not to be. So we're talking about Cancer. Cancer is going to be more clear about what it wants and what it needs, and emotionally it'll cut itself off just a little bit. Seventh house Lord is Saturn. Lord of the seventh house is in the eighth house. And makes the person feel a little bit isolated or a little bit depressed. Don't be, this won't last that long. This combination won't last that long. And Jupiter's in the 10th house, so they'll be more focused on career, more focused on trying to get fame and recognition out. So that aspect will be rewarded over the next few months. It's a good combination for fame. For Leo, Leo has Mercury in the first house and good for financial gains for this sign. So this is August 15th through September 15th. And good for new communications outlets. K2's in the third house. This sign will have a lot of courage and ambition. Relationship life will seem a little bit dull or unsatisfying, to be honest, but luck overall will be good. This is a Raj Yoga for this particular chart. So you'll actually have good financial luck, good financial blessings. And Venus is in the 12th house. So this is actually good for saving money, for putting money aside. So people with Venus in the 12th house like to save money. They'll enjoy putting money aside. Also somewhat good for sexual relations, but again, I think the Saturn aspect is going to delay that or make it a little bit difficult for people to feel really enthusiastic about that. For Virgo, Virgo has Moon, Saturn, and Sun in the first house. I'm just checking the time. We have Moon, Saturn, Sun in the first house, and that makes the person courageous, makes the person kind of self-effacing. They'll be modest, and there'll be some potential for financial gains for this sign, especially because we have a couple of Dana yogas in this chart. So the second house Lord is in the 11th, and the 11th house Lord is in the first. So that's good for financial gains for Virgo. K2 in the second, again, there's kind of a resistance. So money will spill out as quickly as it comes in. That's one of the downsides to this. And there will be a lot of obligations to this. So we have an exchange of lords between the first house and the 12th house, so money will come in, but money will also go out. And I think that particular pattern will persist for the next for the next month or so. And let's see now. Saturn's in the sixth house, so the sign should be careful about enemies or governmental restrictions or even possible attacks. Jupiter's in the eighth house, so there'll be a lot of interest in exploring and investigating things in research. Venus is in the 11th. That's good for financial gains. So there should be some good financial gains, maybe even some new friends coming into your life over the next month or so. For Libra rising, Libra will love its career. Okay, this is October 15th through November 15th, or people who have Sun or I'm sorry, or people who have or rising sign in Libra. And essentially, K2 in the first makes the sign kind of really, excuse me, not kind of really intuitive. Um, and it'll be particularly savvy about property issues. It does have to watch out for its health, though, because it will find itself getting very tired. Its energy level will tend to deplete rather quickly. Um, the other thing you have from this chart is you have Saturn in the fifth house. So whatever you study, whatever you apply yourself to, even things that you studied years ago that you thought you'd never use again, those will come up and be useful. It's good for practice, for practice or studying of any kind. If you're musically inclined, it's good for practicing an instrument. If you're athletically inclined, it's good for practicing um, any kind of physical activity. So it's good for that. Jupiter and Rahu, there'll be attraction to a lot of different people. And that's the one downside with this particular combination. And the people will find themselves really interested in a lot of different relationship partners. But Venus in the 10th house, it'll help you keep clarity of goals, especially monetary goals or self-promotion goals. And that's a good thing for this particular sign right now, especially because the sun's in the 12th house and there'll be a lot of expenses, as is the situation for Virgo. So I think that money will come in quickly, go out quickly, but again, this sign will stay focused on actually promoting itself and moving forward. Scorpio has no planets in the first house, no significant planets in the first house. Saturn's in the fourth house, so there'll be a lot of focus on authority for this particular sign. Jupiter's in the sixth, so there'll be a lot of visits. So it did it less. This is funny. We did it less for a shorter period of time than it did the other times. Um, so this particular sign will have maybe some hypochondria happening. It'll be worried about health issues, but it'll also tend to be a little bit dragged out, feeling a little bit tired and a little bit fragile, to be honest. Um, if we have Venus over here in the ninth house, that indicates good luck from to relationship partners or from relationship partners. Mercury's in Leo in the 10th house. That gives good communication skills and some good financial gains. But there will be expenses because of animals or family members this month. So a lot of signs are experiencing expenses. It's a temporary situation when a lot of these planets are connected over here, really through, I would say, around mid-November for for this cluster over here for essentially Leo through Scorpio, but 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 basically these are short-term issues, and you'll start to see some recovery in November from Saturn being in the fourth house. Is very good for authority at home, and Mercury in the 10th house, very good for career, good for financial gains for Scorpio as well. But again, like I said, expenses. Sagittarius has Jupiter in the fifth, so there'll be a lot of focus on kids, obviously, children, and creative types. Saturn's in the third house. This is where the writer's strike comes from in the United States. By the way, and um, and uh, a lot of combinations. There's a lot of combinations uh, for financial growth for the sign. Uh, with Venus in the eighth house, Mercury's in the ninth, so it should give good benefits for relationship partners. Moon, Mars, and Sun should give good career opportunities. K2 in the 11th again is here. Boy. Okay, so as I was saying before, this is where the writer's strike is coming from in the United States. Rahu Jupiter conjunction, aspected by Saturn, is creative issues. Um, but overall, apart from that particular issue, and that's also where other union issues are coming from in the United States in particular, but I think it's also slowdowns worldwide. I think what you'll see is over the next couple of months, some lessening of tension for this sign in terms of getting its creative energy put together. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Saturn in the second house. This is a good placement. It gives a sign more financial gains. Jupiter's in the fourth house. Again, good for um, expansion of goals. Venus is in the seventh, so some potential for good relationship partners for this sign. Mercury's in the eighth, good for research. Virgo's in the ninth house. It's going to be a little bit of a mixed bag for luck, though, because this time won't feel as confident as it normally does. And finally, when we get over here to K2 in the 10th, K2's in the 10th house. Again, not a lot of recognition for the sign, but we've said this before. But just do your job and you'll be fine. For Aquarius, Saturn's in the first house. We have Mercury in the seventh house, so you'll be associated with a lot of younger people, a lot of people who have really strong communication skills. Venus is in the sixth. There will be some issues with health, especially with family members, and also Rahu and Jupiter in the third house gives a lot of desire to move forward, but not a lot of ability to move forward. There'll be some frustration. Moon is in the eighth house along with Sun and Mars, so there'll be a lot of hidden obstacles for the sign, but again, that'll pass within about a month's time. K2's in the ninth, unexpected luck from unexpected sources. Good for worship for the sign. 10th house is ruled by Mars, so a lot of career life will be connected with research and doing and uh, and recovery, maybe even some financial gains for real estate. For Pisces, Pisces has Rahu and Jupiter in the second house. It's a good combination for financial luck. Um, Venus is in the fifth. That's another good combination for financial luck. Mercury's in the sixth, so it'll give some problems with relationship partners, and there will be arguments with relationship partners this month. Um, K2's in the eighth. That gives a lot of interest in digging behind the scenes, maybe spiritual things, but or occult things, but usually it's just digging behind the scenes, trying to find out what's hidden from you. Um, and Saturn in the 12th house, good for gains, but the gains will be spent rather quickly. Now let's look at the world map and hopefully um, we won't lose connection again. So if we're looking at, so the sun's really close to Hawaii, um, Mercury and Saturn. So there have been some scandals coming out of the Maui fire relief um, foundation. There have been some allegations that number one, the government's not doing all it can do. Number two, there's some land claims being initiated. I don't know how true those are, but that's what I'm reading. Mars and the Moon and Rahu are all influencing California and Western Canada. Now, this is kind of interesting because it's going up through Nevada and all the way up through Idaho. So this can give some governmental scandals in that part of the world. As a matter of fact, it will probably reach into Arizona. The other thing that we want to look at is there's a Venus line running right through um, North Dakota, South Dakota, Mexico, and intersecting with a Jupiter line. So I've heard recently, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, that Governor Abbott is being criticized for sending immigrants to other parts of the country, and so that could be a lot of political issues that are coming up. There's some potential for flooding in this part of the country as well, and some flooding down off the coast of down in Mexico, down here, and also even up through uh, Louisiana and even into Michigan. There are governmental scandals occurring really pretty much throughout Kansas and also Louisiana up through Michigan as well. Um, there's a Saturn line running through Canada near Ottawa. So there have been some allegations of wrongdoing in the Canadian government. I'm not in a position to criticize Canada. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. And also some scandals connected with Cuba, Florida, North and South Carolina, Georgia, and even as far west as, even as far south as Ecuador. And we're receiving a lot of communications out of Washington, obviously, but we're also getting a lot of what I would call bad or distressing or paranoid news out of Washington and New York and Pennsylvania and even Cuba. And again, we have this issue about uh, government interference in Haiti because Haiti is becoming essentially a really dangerous place for anybody to be. Um, Not sure if that justifies an invasion. I don't know the details well enough. Um, but um, and there's a Saturn line over Peru, Ecuador, and close to Chile and Argentina. And we have the Sun line over here. So Argentina is experiencing some governmental suppression. Venezuela is experiencing some governmental suppression. South America, as we move eastward to Brazil, it looks like there are fights or conflicts. And again, the moon, maybe the start of some new government disruption in um, in Brazil. So watch Brazil over the next couple of months. I think it'll be really, really interesting. As we go eastward, we can see the Azores is having nothing really connected with it except for this moon line. So some potential for flooding, but not really major. And it's between a Jupiter uh, and the Rahu line, so there can be some government scandals connected. Um, the Jupiter and Venus line, again, flooding, and I don't want to say flooding and earthquakes in Morocco, but as we go to this part of um, of Africa, down through Mali and down through Ghana, uh, that part of the world is still not out of harm's way, and so flooding is possible over here in Algeria and even in parts of France and Spain. And you'll see some governmental disruption definitely uh, in France. That's still gonna be the case, and even in Norway and Sweden, which sounds really weird, just because they're typically relatively placid states, and also even in Belgium. As we go a little bit to the east, you have Italy's in between a Saturn line and a Venus line, so there'll be some problems getting financial growth going for this part of Europe, Germany, all the way through um, Greece, and even into um, let's see, Libya and down through uh, Western Africa. So we have Saturn lines afflicting the west coast of Africa, so that's not good for crop production and things like that. We have a descending Mercury line, so we'll be hearing more about Western Africa over the next few months. We hear surprisingly little about other parts of the world in the United States, which has always irritated me ever since I was a kid, but that's pretty much the way it goes. Um, we have a Saturn line. I'm sorry, a sun line. Is that a Saturn or a sun line? That's a sun line running through Turkey, so there may be some more in Egypt and down into Sudan and all the way down to South Africa. I'm not skipping over these other republics. It's just um, the line is all the way down Africa. So you'll see some increased government authority in those parts of the world, um, and also up into Poland and into the Ukraine. Ukraine is going to be very violent this month, over the next few weeks, um, and not a lot of resolution, unfortunately. Maybe even some scandal resulting from the Ukraine and Saudi Arabia and Iran. Um, there does look like there's some potential conflict between Iran and Afghanistan, at least because of the Jupiter line hitting through these two regions. And the western part of India will be brought into it somewhat. There'll be some governmental scandal in Jupiter as the Jupiter line runs through central India, down through Tamil Nadu, down through Sri Lanka. And there's a Saturn line right over Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, and it'll affect. So Vietnam is right here. So it's kind of far away from Vietnam, but Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia are all kind of in difficulty. So is Indonesia to a certain extent. Um, and let's see now. And China has a sun line, so there'll be more governmental authority in China, which is not really a big surprise. And but we'll be hearing more about it. Actually, trade-wise, it looks like Eastern Cambodia and Vietnam will be in the news. So that's interesting. They already are, but that's interesting. And the Philippines will also be experiencing some increased government crackdowns, and so will Borneo, and so will Western Australia. And when I say crackdowns, I'm not necessarily saying like you're going to see like people being taken out and attacked, but governments expressing their authority a bit more. Korea looks pretty much Korea is between Sun and Mars, so it's kind of a volatile area. But Mars is over here with Japan, so I'm expecting a little bit of um, violence in Japan, or maybe some kind of uh, Earth activity or catastrophe in Japan. I hope not, and also down through New Guinea. Um, Australia, possibly some fires. And as we go over here, we'll see the government of Australia more in the news, more because of domestic policies. And there's a Venus line and a Jupiter line intersecting over by uh, New Zealand. So New Zealand looks like it's going to calm down just a little bit, but there'll still be political scandal or unrest in New Zealand. So that's it for this week. Hopefully this video came out without too many breaks in it because I was gaining and losing connection. So I'm going to check it before I send it out. Again, it's probably it probably goes without saying, but I would love it if you would subscribe. I would love it if you would like, and I would love it if you comment. It would help the channel grow, and I am looking to help the channel grow and become more of a presence, both in Vedic astrology and in terms of spending more time on YouTube and giving you guys a better product. So thank you very much for watching. I love you all. God bless you all, and have a safe and peaceful week. And remember, challenges are opportunities. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Okay.